Hello, my name is Stephen Knight. What we want to answer with this particular session is how do we add data over time to our Power Pivot. So we might have additional data every month, or we might have blocks of data coming in where we get it as a CSV or as a spreadsheet. How do we actually add that data to the data model so we can do Power Pivots? I'm using Excel 2013 here. I've downloaded the Power Query tool. If you've got Excel 2016, you actually get Power Query as a standard feature. We are starting with some existing data in place. We've got a table of postcodes, a table of products, and a supporting date table that through Power Pivot have already been added to the data model. You might recognize these if you watched my tutorial from a couple of weeks ago where we created a Power Pivot based on the data completely being in Excel. This is the same data, just very simple data that we can use to explore some of the concepts. So where we're heading here, we need to actually add the sales data. So first off, we've got 2014 sales data already in a spreadsheet. We need to add that in. Then we've got 3 months of data as CSV files. We're going to import those all and process them all in one go. We will then actually set up some calculated columns and some measures, and then we're going to move from that to saying, right, we've got this up and working. We've now got next month's data, so we'll add some April data, which we'll call next month's data, and see how we can bring that in without having to completely redo everything. Now this is all revolving around Power Query and Power Pivot using Excel 2013. Works very similarly in Excel 2016 as well. So let's make a start. Where we're heading is over to Power Query, and what we have, we're going to bring in some data we've got in a file. It's in an Excel workbook already, and where we're going to go here is to a particular location. And in that particular location, that's actually the April data we'll bring in later, but we've got our 2014 data in an Excel workbook already. We'll go OK there. And now, what I have here is I've already made a table called sales data in the workbook, which you just do through selecting table. If you want to see this again, I've covered how to make tables in the previous tutorial. So we've got our data here. It's looking pretty good. It's almost ready to go. We can do some editing here if we needed to, but I know because this is coming from Excel and I previously made a table, generally things that need to be dates, numbers, and other data types, that will all be good. I'm going to add calculations to this later. So what I'm going to do here, now I'm just going to move this little dialog up a little bit so you can see what I'm up to. I'm going to load the data into the model. I'm going to do this through load to because I want to specifically look at some particular options. I'm going to create a connection rather than import it into a table. Where you might want to do this is if you've got some data, the source data is coming from a source where it's going to be too big to fit in a table in Excel, so more than 1,048,000 rows. Obviously not the specific case here because it's coming from an Excel workbook already, but just think about that. If you've got data coming from an Access database, it could easily be 2 million rows or more, in which case you go and create a connection, and we do want to add this to a data model so that we've got it in our data model and we can set relationships and things up. We'll click load. And what we'll see here is we've got 365 rows worth of data. which I know that's the correct number of rows because in the little dummy business we're using here, they make one sale per day, and when they've made their sale, they're off to have lunch and just generally not work too hard. So that's our first set of data imported there. I'm going to save that. Now that that data is actually imported, let's have a look at Power Pivot, and we'll actually have a look at the model there, see what we've got going on. So we can see here that our data, that's the date data. So what we've got here is our manage view from Power Pivot. We can see the tables that I'd loaded previously. We've got our dates that we can use for grouping and organising our dates later. And we've got our sales data. Now the key point here with this sales data is, if I just reorder this, we can see that it finishes at the 31st of December. And it starts on the 1st of January 2014. So it's a year's worth of data. Now, if we have a look now at our diagram view, we can set up our relationships. I'll just organise this a little bit differently just to facilitate what we're doing. So we're going to have a relationship between the transaction date and our date in our date table. We will have a relationship between postcodes and the customer postcodes. We can get some demographics, and we will have a relationship between product ID and product code. A little tip here for good practice would be to give your columns, make sure they've got the same names. It just makes this a little bit easier to do, but it's not always going to be practical. So we've got that set up. I'll return to the data view. I will save my work, and we are now ready to run Power Query and bring in our first, to bring in our batch of data that we've got. So we've brought in the first year's worth of data, but we've now got 3 months as individual CSV files. We're going to bring these in together and at the same time. Now, a little tip here. After bashing my head up against a brick wall trying to get this to work, I discovered that if I'm looking at not doing any code, I can't bring in multiple Excel workbooks at the same time. I can bring in multiple CSV files. For those of you who want to explore working with a little bit of coding, you will find some YouTube videos around that will show you how to do bringing in Excel workbooks, but I want to go with a no-code approach and just work with the tools without coding. So what I've done previously is saved the data that you've exported from SAP or wherever it's coming from as a CSV rather than an Excel workbook. So comma separated values, it's effectively a text file. This will also work with XML as well. So let's do it. I'm going to Power Query. I'm going to say from file, and I'm going to say from folder because I've previously pre-positioned the necessary CSV files in a folder, and to simplify the navigation, I've got a location for them here. And when I go OK, I'm now seeing my CSV files, and I've also just going to reorganize my screen layout just a little tiny bit here. So what we see are the 3 CSV files for January, February and March. And what we want to do, we're going to click the combine button. Now, it's this little fella here next to content, 2 little downward pointing arrows. I'm going to click combine, which will combine all of that data. Now, the next thing I need to do is in transform, I'm going to say, look, use the first row as headers. Now, an interesting little thing here, you'll notice we're accumulating the steps down the side. When we come to appending a little later on, it's going to be very useful to see those steps. Also, if you need to unravel something you've done, you can delete a step. So we've got our steps recorded there. Now, we've got a couple of problems with this data. The first thing is, because it's come in from a number of CSV files, the headings get repeated. So let's deal with that. And this is a good little illustration of what Power Query can do. I'm going to go into Salesperson. I'm going to set up a text filter. And in my text filter, I'm going to say, look, I want to exclude records that are actually saying my value is salesperson, which means it's actually just a row of headings. So this is one of the nice things of Power Query, is you can get it to exclude data that you don't want to use in your analysis. It could be certain categories or data outside or within certain date ranges. In this case, it's any rows that are actually just headings. We'll get rid of those. Now, virtual chocolate frogs to those of you who spotted that we have some empty rows in here. Maybe the CSV was a bit messy and it's included some empty rows. Well, that's not a drama. We can actually deal with that. Now, you'll notice down the bottom I've got 93 rows there. I'm going back to the Home tab. I can come up here to remove rows, and I have an option, remove blank rows. And I've removed 3 blank rows, and I'm now down to 90 rows, and it's all data. So it's recorded all those steps for me. Now, where we're heading now is, I want to give this table a name, and I'm going to call this Jan-Mar data. So, or this query. I said table, query, because it's not going to be a table. Now that I've got to this point, we need to do a little bit more manipulation here. When I go to my transaction dates and I go to transform, you'll notice here the data type is text. So I'm going to make the data type a date. My product code is a whole number. My units sold is also a whole number. My sale price is currency, and my customer postcode. Now, my customer postcode in the original spreadsheet that was the source of the year's worth of sales data, this customer postcode is a number. So I need this all to be matching so that it all matches up nice and neatly. So we're going to say this is a whole number. So these now have data types that will match the data that they're going to be appended to. You will need to experiment with that a little bit. Now, the next thing I need to do is back here on the Home tab. I'm going to close and load, and again I'm going to this second option, which gives me a little bit of control over what happens. Again, I just want this to be a connection, because this could be a big chunk of data. It's not in this case, it's just a little sample bit. Now, I'm not ticking add this to the data model, because what that would give me is a stray table, which I would then need to hide. What I really want to do here is just connect to this, and then we'll actually append it to our existing sales data that is in the data model, and we can then use. So I'm going to click load, and for luck, I'm going to click save. Now, those of you who are doing this with limited resources as far as memory and processor power, lots of saving as you go along here, because this can misbehave sometimes. So we've gone through, we said use the first row as headers, we've done some filtering, got rid of our blank rows, we have sorted out our data types, and we've said don't load this to the data model. Now, how do we add this to our existing sales data? Let's do it. I'll come over here, you get a nice little preview. This is very handy. Again, if you're working with large blocks of data, you just want to preview, and I could go to edit there, or I could have just double clicked, and this has taken me in here now so that I can edit. And what I want to do, I'm in the sales data. I want to add in this new 3 months worth of data. So what I'm looking for here, under Home, is I want to append. So I'm going to append. It says, look, what do you want to append? And I've got my January to March data already prepared, massaged, ready to go. If I then go OK, now I've now got 455 rows, so I've got more rows. It was up from originally 365. My other little check here is I might sort these in descending order. Where the dates finished in December 2014, I've now got dates up to March 2015, and I'll clear that sort. So that's now good to go. I'll close and load, and I'll also save. Now, what I want to do next is I want to just go into the Power Pivot side of things for a moment, do some calculations, prepare for doing a pivot table. We'll do a simple pivot table, and then we'll bring in another month's data, because with the general onward march of time, we're going to get new data coming in. So we need to go to Power Pivot. I'm going to go to Manage. I've got my data in here. I'm going to add a column. Now this is just a quick bit of revision of some things that we did in the previous tutorial. I'm going to have the value of each sale, and this is just a quick little calculation where I'm going to say, look, it's the units sold multiplied by the unit price. Done. Now we have relationships going on here, so I want to work out the commission, which is coming from my product table. So I've got commission as a heading. We'll do a little formula here where I'm going to say this is related, and this is where this is using IntelliSense. So I just type P for products, and it brings up a list. I can choose commission from the product table. We already have a relationship in place, and I can multiply that by the sales value. So we're seeing your commission multiplied by the value of the sale. So it'll use the commission rate applicable for the product. Little error there. It's worth seeing, actually, because you need to watch your brackets with this. I needed to close my brackets with the related function. Like regular Excel, the brackets will bold just to confirm that for you, and that's looking good. So that little error wasn't intended, but worth seeing so that we know what's going on. So what we've done there is created some calculations with different commission rates applying depending on what product it is in the product table. We've got different commissions. Let's save our work there. And now what we want to do is we're going to create a pivot table and then bring in next month's data. With the march of time, we need to keep this up to date. So I'm going back into Manage. While I'm here, I was going to create some measures. Let's just very quickly create a couple of very simple measures where we've seen a calculated column. These are calculated fields, or I'm going to call them measures because that's the terminology for 2016 onwards, and it's a name that makes sense. So we've got a value for our sum of sales and a value for our commission as a total. That I won't do much with those in this particular exercise, but in later tutorials we will do some more work with measures because there's some really clever stuff going on there. Now, so we want to make a pivot table. That's what we're here for. So let's make a brand new pivot table. I'll put this in a new worksheet, and I'm just going to close the queries there for a minute just to give me a little bit of room. And I want to get data from some different tables, which we can take advantage of our relationships to do that. So I'll grab sales values and drop that in values. And what I'm now going to do is grab salesperson, drop that in columns. From our date data, I'm going to get month. I do want year in here first, and now my apologies, what I actually want is month name. So I've got month name in here. We'll very quickly sort this. So I'm just going to go into more sort options. Again, we covered this in, I've got a little short, very short tutorial that gets into this dealing with sorting by date. I'm going to go into more options here. I don't want it automatically sorting. I want it sorting in month order, which is a preset sort order that Excel knows about. And we've now got January to December. Now, for those of you who are really on the ball, you will know that we are dealing with data across more than one calendar year. So now that I've added month, I can now add year into my rows area so that I have them by rows, by month, and by year rather, and then by month. My tip there is sort the months out first and then add your years. So that's our little report there. We could even add some currency formatting. So I've just gone in through value field settings there, into number, into currency, 0 decimal places in this data, and we've got some nice dollar signs. Or you could go with the accounting format that left aligned your dollar sign. Now, so far we've got 704,191. Now, what we need to do is we are going to bring in our extra month's data that we've now got, the April data. Okay, so we prepared this earlier in March perhaps, and we've now got the April data. So I've gone to Power Query. I've gone to, also I'm going to show the pane because I need the pane. And I'm going to go to bring this in from a file, and I've got here my April sales data. So I'm going to bring in my April 2015 sales data, same structure as before. I've already given this a table name in the workbook. So I've picked the table rather than the sheet. Now, wanting to be a little bit clever here, I'm going to do the load to thing. Now, because in my grand plan, I'm never really going to work with April just by itself. I want to bring April into the overall collection of data we're bringing in. So I'm going to create a connection and load it to the connection. I'm not going to load it into the data model. So we can use it, but it's not going to appear in the data model. We're going to actually append it to our sales data and use it that way. So I'm clicking load there, and I've now got my April sales data there to be ready to be used. Saving. I'm now going to go into my April sales data, just double clicking, but I could have gone in through edit. Now, this is where we need to go to append, and we're going to append our April sales data. Sensible names for these things, folks. Don't leave them at table 1, 2, and 3, or you're going to wonder which query you're meant to be using. Let's go OK. And now let's test this out. If I sort in descending order, I've now got dates up to the 30th of April 2015, and my number of rows is about 30 bigger than what it was before. So clear that. So that's looking pretty good. Let me just do that again, sorting in descending order. So that's all come in. I'm really, really, really happy with that. I will clear the sort. And I want to close and load to effectively save that. Now, you'll notice we've got April data appearing here in our pivot table. How easy is that? Okay, so folks, this is using Power Query to solve the problem of how do I progressively add data into my Power Pivot.